Did I tell you about my idea about the future of home defense?
Is it robots or handguns?
It's a combination.
Oh, hell yeah, let's go. I don't know.
So I haven't. Okay.
No,
Okay.
no.
All right. So you have to follow me here, and I know it's like kind of ridiculous, but I'm not fucking joking. Like I've told this to Synovia and to my nana, and they both laugh. Okay.
Okay.
So you know how Tesla has the home automation robot thing, like that personal assistant.
No.
Okay, so Tesla is they showed a while back that they're working on a assistant that is like a humanoid robot that will accept your commands, and I suppose that it would be like, hey, get me a glass of water. I guess simple things like that. You know, maybe feed the dog. I don't really know whatever, but I'm assuming just basic things like this. So you think, okay, let's say that this industry takes off, right? Where it maybe one day it can vacuum for you, so it's like a Roomba and also a robot man, right? But why are they making it humanoid? And I think it's like to kind of be comfortable with having it in your house, and just you don't really see it as anything other than a helper. Like you can kind of relate to it or whatever. But it's supposed to be in your home. It's supposed to be a part of your home. And so I think the natural progression of that is that you combine home defense into this machine. And then you come to this conclusion that, like, well, AI will never be good enough. In my opinion, right? Like maybe Elon Musk disagrees or whatever, but I don't think AI will ever be good enough to replace cars, and I don't think it'll be good enough to trust it with firearms. You know, no matter how whatever, like it can't recognize stuff or whatever is as good as it would need to. So then it's like, well, they have these things where at the moment it's like, hey, Mr. Garcia, you know, I noticed that your thing went off. Just wanted to make sure you're okay. And if I say, oh, yeah, you know, I'm sorry about that. I hit the button by mistake, whatever, it's all good. That happens. It's no problem. But if I'm like, yeah, Tesla security, you know, actually, there's this guy just broke into the window. My wife and kids are in the thing, and I have, you know, a baseball bat, but I don't really know what to do. And he's like, if you'll give me permission, Mr. Garcia, I can take over control of your robot. And I'll be like, oh, yeah, go ahead, you know. And he then takes manual control. And then it brings out the yoppers, you know. It brings out the fucking two semi-automatic handguns, you know, dual wielding, and they only come out when the manual override is triggered. So then this dude's basically playing Xbox at the Tesla headquarters, shooting up the home invaders. And I would pay good money for this, and I do think it could happen. You know what I mean? Like I think that could happen in the future.
I feel like so much could go wrong with this plan.
So much could go wrong with me, like not knowing how to use a gun, and I bought a gun, and I'm hoping for the best, but like I try to use a gun for the first time, and this fucking whatever. This robot can basically, this thing can get shot as much as whatever because it's a robot. Who cares, right? And like, you know, the dude just has to get business done. You know, he's basically playing some Counter-Strike or whatever, some team deathmatch. You know. From his perspective, life is easy, and he's saving my family.
Interesting idea. I'll give you that much. I think the risk of somebody remotely getting access to your Tesla robot and just blasting a whole family is a very high risk.
Sure. Like let's say that security problems or whatever are solved. I would say that security is different from the other fear that I actually have of the AI stuff. So like, whatever, I think that's a different thing. But just making it secure, I don't see the you know, I wouldn't be too worried about it, I guess, because everything is dangerous. I don't know, whatever, you know. Again, I would rather have that than like me try to akimbo the dude, you know.
I honestly find it kind of weird that we're going with human-shaped robots to begin with. Yeah. I feel like I'd be more comfortable with like a quadruped animal-looking one. You know what I mean? Like a dog, basically, like a service dog almost.
Yeah, I guess in my ideal scenario, it would be like a dog, but not with a torso of a dog. It's just like an AR-15 with legs, you know, something like this that can defend.
Yeah. I really do imagine, like, you know, every 2-year-old in the world is going to be all over that thing too. If my nephew is any indication with my dog, they will climb into and over every aspect of your dog, and that's your security machine too. That's frightening. Also, the possibility that Elon Musk decides to just kill everybody who opposes him, which I don't put past him.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, I don't know.
Elon Musk is like, actually, I'm going to take over my rightful place as controller of the whole universe. And everyone who's like, no, I don't think so, is like, well, sucks. And then he just turns off our brain chips and shoots us down or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, whatever, man. If you win, you win. If you get me like that, it's like a diplomatic victory in Civ or whatever. It's like, okay, you got that, big bro.
Fucking diplomatic victory in Civ. Holy shit, that's good.
Holy shit. Your reaction to my home defense robot wasn't like as superb as I would have hoped, but I'm still leaving it in to the podcast. By the way, that was the intro of the podcast. Because shit. I am so into that idea. I do think it's going to happen someday.
I don't think it's a bad idea. I'm just concerned with the implications of a robot with a gun in your house with the ability for like somebody else to take over and kill people. Like, that's my primary concern.
Or what if, I mean, I guess
if like you had to take over the robot.
Okay.
But like even then, like unless you practice, like when you pick up a brand new shooter, there's like a learning curve. Like even if you pick up like Call of Duty and then you buy next year's Call of Duty, and even though it's exactly the same game, the exact same mechanics, it takes you a little bit to like get used to everything. I feel like it would be like that. You'd have to do like you'd have to take your robot to the shooting range equivalent and practice. But at that point, just buy your own gun or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, okay, in a perfect world, you're John fucking Wick. And when they break in, you've already cut their throat open by the time they break the window. Hold on.
I want to back up a second. In a perfect world, no one's breaking into anyone else's houses. Let's start with that. We're in an imperfect world.
Sure.
But somebody is going to break into your house, so you should be like John Wick.
Yes, everything is perfect except for home invasions. They still exist. In that world, then you would be John Wick in a perfect world. However, most people are not. And I would rather have remote controlled experts controlling a robot to defend my physical body than me running out there, magazines not even in, type, don't even know what the fuck I'm doing type of guy.
In your tidy whities, yeah.
No, dude, dick out.
That's very intimidating. There's quite a few stories of people scaring off home intruders completely naked.
Yeah, well, we'll see.
The person chasing the home intruder away. The home intruders weren't naked. Just to clarify what I was saying. That's
a power move. Just if you break
into someone else's house, but ass out. Yeah, that is a power move. I should do that next time I visit you.
Well, I was going to say earlier, I got a Ring camera, so it records all the motion up front. So if you do that, I would have the secret Yazeed dick footage that all of our listeners have been asking for.
Fucking mint that shit, bro.
Yeah, I'm making an NFT, dude. That's another thing.
I mint the Yazeed balls out NFT. There's no reason not to.
Fuck, what was I going to say? Oh, a lot of the crypto stuff, a lot of the different projects and sites, they have websites that end with .io. So unfortunately, we're kind of like, we share that thing. So the fact that I now have an NFT profile picture on Twitter and I have Homegames.io in my description, people who don't read things are going to just immediately think that we're NFT assholes when they see the project, which, fair.
I don't know. They'll probably see my Twitter account too, probably, and that is just memes. All I do is like memes.
We just need to balance it. So every time I post anything about cryptocurrency or NFT, you tweet something anti-cryptocurrency or NFT, or just straight up anti-me. Just like, fuck Joseph. just throw it in there every now and then.
It really plays into the, like, if we ever got really big and people were like trying to tear apart our relationship based on our podcast episodes, that would really fuck them up, honestly.
The NFT divide. That would be tragic if that ruined our friendship.
Yeah. Listen, you'd have to do something really like crazy. Like you'd have to do an NFT scam, but like aimed at old people. Like you'd have to be like, I'm doing an NFT scam specifically for retirees. Like,
it's a young and restless NFT. You
yeah,
get Victor
dude, I'm
Newman.
like, what the fuck, Joseph? That's I can't handle that.
My mom sent me a text a few days ago, and I don't know who sent it to her or whatever, but the NFT stuff I think is so mainstream because she sent me a link to an NFT project and was like, "Is this a video game?" Like she was trying to just learn about what that whole thing was or whatever. But I don't know. That's what I mean. If my mom hears about it, it's like there's some sort of money system behind all of it that's keeping it there, despite all of the people our age, like in the popular Twitter conversation or whatever, who are like, "LOL, crypto crash" or whatever. It's like there's something beyond that. I think. I don't know.
I don't know. I'll never not forget the fact that some crypto bros were like, "We're gonna make an NFT dating app," and then they had to cancel it because it was only dudes.
Oh,
Which never won't be funny for me. That should never not be funny for me. What's funnier is that they should have just made that and been like, I don't know, you can date whoever you want to date. Who cares? But no, they pulled it out. They're like, no.
It's basically just Grindr with NFTs. Well, I guess
Grindr with NFTs sounds like kind of dope for NFT bros who are also into dudes. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, we just gotta see. I think in another world we could make that and make some legitimate money off of it. Like a gay dating crypto app sounds like some bullshit that would get funding maybe like 6 months ago, maybe not right now, but you know what I mean. It sounds like something that could get us $1 million.
Crypto bros really only ever think about themselves. I think it's like there really was. There probably has always been a market for LGBTQ crypto people, but no. That dating app could have been a slam dunk for the LGBTQ crypto community is all I'm saying.
Yeah, I guess we'll never know. But like I said, Homegames fails, what we can build that. But until then, do you want to talk about some of the Homegames stuff that I worked on over the past 2 weeks?
Yeah. Before we get into all of it, what is going on with this numbers thing?
Oh, do you want to start with that? We can start with that if you'd like.
Yeah, so for listeners, Joseph and I do have notes for this podcast, surprising as it may be. Sometimes we do have notes for this podcast, and in these notes it just says gatekeeper auth lambda 332, then builder build services 249, and it continues on for quite a few lines. So I actually remember what this is for.
Okay, so yeah, we could start with that. So last episode, we talked about how we wanted to get a count of how many lines of code we added in total for everything. And I don't remember for sure. It's in the podcast. I don't remember the numbers, though. I think I said something like 15,000, and you said 100,000.
All right.
Okay. So what I did was I went through all of our code. And basically, it's kind of hard to get this number because there's a lot of stuff that I've written that we don't actually use. And there's a lot of different kind of iterations of this stuff before that we've scrapped and rewritten and stuff. So those changes don't exist. Like this number is specifically the lines in all of the .js files across all these different packages I'm going to mention. So we also have like HTML and CSS in our web app stuff that I don't count there, and maybe some other stuff that I just forgot to count in the thing. So this is a pretty good estimate of the right number, but it might be missing some stuff. Okay, all that out of the way, I guess I could just go through these numbers, try to make them interesting. I'll give you the total number first. The total number of lines, unless you don't want me to spoil it, Yazeed, what do you think? You can read it right in front of you.
Here's the thing. I haven't looked through all of them yet. I've only looked at like the top 3, and I've seen the last number. So if we wanted to play like a guessing game, I can not look at the notes, and I can try to guess.
So you've only seen Home
like
Dome?
The name. I've only seen like whatever the top 3. Honestly, if you just do them out of order, I probably will definitely not remember. So
Okay. You say you're going to make a bet. You think it's not 100,000 like you thought?
No, I know what the last number. I know what the total is. But if you want to do like the individuals, then I'll try to guess what they're.
Okay, got it. Okay, so how many lines of code do you think Homegames.io the website is?
Oh my gosh. Okay, I know it's got to be low because Homegames.io the website is mostly HTML and CSS.
So there's the way I do vanilla HTML stuff is I always make like basically a very simple JS framework for all of the DOM stuff. So there is quite a bit of JS in there for all of the DOM manipulation. It's not all HTML.
Ah, okay.
And there's also the app server, like the node server that serves the client.
Oh shoot, that's included too. Okay. I'm gonna say like 800.
Okay. So the server itself, the node server, has 318 lines. And this is not minified or processed in any way. This is just raw. And then the client is 1,785 lines. And it's because of that kind of mini framework that I write where, I just basically using the straight, like, DOM manipulation APIs, like, get child, append child, all that kind of stuff. Pretty whatever, but yeah, that light framework it adds up to a lot. So in total, it's 2,103 lines of code in Homegames IO.
I was close.
I mean, that's a reasonable guess. I think there's probably ways I could have done this site if I had kind of planned it out better. And also, I need to go and finish all of the styling and stuff on the website. So this, this might change in the way that I actually add some of the DOM elements and stuff in the JS, so that number might change a bit. But anyway, not fully done, but 2,100 lines, not that bad. Kind of too much, but whatever.
Fair. Do you have that the little library that you're talking about? Do you have that like pulled out into its own like set, or do you just rewrite it each time, or like copy it from another project or something?
It's kind of different each time because I kind of adapt it to the specific thing that I'm doing, where like I try to keep it super light, so I don't really have generic functions generally. I'll have kind of specific functions, and they'll do specific things for the specific app. And it's not that much of a pain, I guess, to rewrite it. It's not so formalized, so that's another thing too. I couldn't necessarily split it out.
Oh, okay, I got you.
Yeah, or at least not easily, because I'm like not the... Maybe I'm a terrible programmer. Everything I write is like one-off. Like it's not general. Anyway, whatever.
Joseph is the definition of like I saved -8 hours by writing this program to do this.
True. Okay, and so how many lines do you think are in Squish?
Okay, so Squish, for people who don't know, is the tool that takes the data for like the render of the screen and compresses it. Well, yeah, it like compresses it into like an integer, an unsigned integer array, and then it also has the unsquish, which takes that unsigned integer array and turns it back into like the object that it should represent, which is like the game node class. And I've actually looked through that code, and I at one point converted all of it to TypeScript. I should know by like the back of my hand how big this is. I'm gonna say it's like 1,800, 21. I'm gonna say it's like 3K probably. I'm gonna say it's like closer to 3K.
You were so close, and then you were incredibly close, and then you fucking blew it. Squish is 2,053 lines.
Damn, I was close the first time.
Yeah, I'm kind of surprised at this one. I'm kind of surprised it's so much, but at the same time, I kind of get it. Basically, the core of this is this class, this game node class, and these other kind of subclasses of it, where they're kind of typed, text node, asset node, generic game node, kind of whatever stuff. So that plus all of these property mapping functions to and from, kind of for text, this is how I turn it to a squished array of numbers, and here is how I turn it from a squished array of numbers. And some of those get kind of gnarly, and that code can be rewritten, I guess, and that's probably where a lot of that chunk comes from. But at the end of the day, it's not that huge of a number considering what it does. So, it's pretty cool. It's quite a bit. There's probably a lot of other versions in Squish that we've lost, probably hundreds of lines, if not thousands of lines that we've removed or refactored or whatever at this point. And then we can look at the GitHub contributions graph, but that'll count stuff like package lock JSON files, which are just, it's not easy to parse that and get not garbage out of it. So I just kind of manually just counted up whatever we have today. Okay, how many lines do you think Landlord has? Landlord is, for everybody unfamiliar, server that basically returns all of our game and asset information stored in the system that are used by all the games people make for home games.
Man. Does this include... Oh, I don't even remember. Does Landlord have, like, schema information for, like, the AWS DynamoDB that drives it?
Schema information, you mean, like, when it makes requests, does it have a consistent object? Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean?
I don't know, like, for Postgres or... Yeah, like for Postgres, you'll have like the defined out, like here's the columns for this table or this table.
Yeah, so Dynamo doesn't require an actual schema, like that's part of the NoSQL thing. So we essentially just need to have guaranteed keys in our table. So you define something as a primary key or an optional sort or secondary key. And all that's required in the JSON objects that you send is that they have those values, and then you kind of store arbitrary data along with it. You can create indexes that also use other properties that are maybe different from your primary and secondary keys. So maybe you can have a third property that you want to search specifically, and you can set up an index to do that. But in general, yeah, we don't need the schema. We just need to know, kind of what are we putting in and what's the key of what we're getting. And generally we can assume like it might have these properties, but it's generally safe to just do conditional checks on stuff because it might not have all properties that you're looking for or whatever. Unless you manage your data better, whatever. You do whatever you want. You can fuck yourself into whatever corner you want with NoSQL because there is no schema, I guess is the long and short of it.
Yeah. Okay. So probably not very big. I'm going to say maybe 500 lines.
Really? Yeah. Landlord is 1,638 lines.
God damn, dude. I'm either over or under by like a huge amount. Holy moly.
And so Landlord we recently rewrote and I refactored and removed quite a bit of the duplicated stuff, which was most of the time like processing the request headers and stuff like that because I don't use a framework. Because again, I'm a proud caveman being slow and inefficient till I die. But... yeah, basically, so there's quite a bit of stuff that Landlord is responsible for that even I forget sometimes. So I think that's probably just a lot of the reason is just a lot of stuff that we don't think of, like individual asset controller, list assets, list games, publish game, that kind of stuff. Like it's all there. Okay, so what's a more interesting one? Okay, Home Dome. How many lines do you think Home Dome is? And Home Dome, for people, is a service that basically tests out games before we allow them to be published into our database. It'll take your game, basically poke it a little bit, make sure it's not insane or a virus, and then we'll publish.
Oh, man. The actual code to publish isn't in Home Dome, is it?
The actual code to publish... is in Home Dome because Landlord is what's putting a message on an Amazon simple queue service queue, and that's basically the publish request. Home Dome picks that up and then actually sets the publish state on the record in the database, which is basically publishing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Huh. I'm gonna say Home Dome. I think Home Dome is probably pretty big, so I'm gonna say like 2.5K.
That's a good guess because I agree. This thing does a lot, and I think I'm actually super proud of this because Home Dome is 677 lines.
Yo,
for everything, for everything it does, and that's between the three things. That's between the main process that it actually runs, that listens to the SQS events and stuff. There is the part that parses strace output in when it's running in the subprocess stuff. So. Yeah, I mean, we definitely are missing some features and some thoroughness, and I imagine Home Dome will grow to be significantly larger in the future as we, run into more edge cases that we need to protect against. But yeah, the fact that it does what it does now for less than 700 lines, that's like pretty cool. So
yeah, it is dope.
Okay, final one. Oh wait, did we talk about Homegames Web? Did I already ask you about Homegames Web?
You did not ask about Homegames
Web. Okay, then last two. Homegames Web.
Okay.
Keep in mind this is the client and the app server, similar to the other thing. And I just realized in my head this number is slightly off, but not by much. So.
Okay. So here's my thinking on this one.
Okay.
The actual driver of most of the logic is not on the client side. So what this one should be doing is asking for the unsquished version. Like, it gets the squished version, it asks for the unsquished version. Once it has the unsquished version, then it's like, all right, gotta render this SOB. At that point, it just renders it. And it renders it using like an HTML canvas, which isn't a lot of code. It's just like the translation from squished, unsquished, like game node class, or game node object to rendered output. So I'm gonna say it's like kind of small. I'd say like 700. Let's go up a little bit. Let's go to 940 lines of code.
Very specific guess. It is. You're not that off. It's 1210.
Let's go. Honestly, within 300, that's the best I've done so far.
And you're really, really close, because 134 lines are the actual server, just very simple, just serving up the index.html and CSS, and the JS file, the bundle. But the client itself, the actual logic to render, like you were mentioning, is 1,076 lines. So it's really not that far off.
Dang, okay, all right.
Okay, for the finale, how many lines do you think are in Homegames core?
Okay, Homegames core is big.
This is everything. This is the Homegames root, which we render at the root of all of the games that we show. This is the game server and all of the port switching via the dashboard and all of the sample games that we have in there and all the utilities that we have in the Homegames core repo.
Is the dashboard included in this count?
Yeah.
All right. I know the dashboard is at least like 1.5K on its own, I think. So I don't know. So I know this is big. This is probably the most lines of code we have. And earlier I guessed 2,300, and that was wrong. So do I go with the 2,300 again? I'm gonna go with. Dang, I think I'm gonna go with 20. I'm going to get specific. I'm going to see if I actually can get this one exactly. I'm going to get 2,837 lines.
Okay, I just want to remind you, this also includes all of the test games that we have in
Wait.
Homegames.
Wait. Okay,
so it's got the test games, the dashboard, the root.
Hold on. Let's cut that part. You know what I mean? All right, let's go with 5,622.
Okay. Interesting. Okay, so your numbers are not far off, but the value of the numbers is wrong. So the number is 6,420 lines in Homegames core.
Oh, okay. I'm not that far off, honestly.
You said 5,422 or something like that. So the number is like 6,420, 5,422.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I see what you mean. Just like transposed. Okay.
Yeah. So that's definitely the biggest by far. Second place is probably Homegames.io with 100. But yeah, 6,420 lines. There's other stuff in there too that we didn't mention, but they're kind of smaller services or tools or deployment stuff or whatever. So the grand total is 16,155 lines of code that we've written over the past little over 4 years. So you just want to math that out. That's about 4,000 lines a year, over all this time, which is really kind of a lot. There's 365 days. Divided by 4,000 lines roughly in a year. It's about 9 lines a day. That sounds okay. Right? I'm trying to see if I worked hard enough.
But I don't think that it's fair to do it by lines per day. I would do it lines per 2-week block, because that's generally how we do the podcast. So
divided by. So then I guess it's 52 divided by 4,000. So then, what the hell? 0.013. What is that?
You divide 4,000 by the 52 divided by 2.
Oh, yeah. See? Together, we can figure out math. That's 76.92.
Yeah, 76.92 every 2 weeks, I think, is pretty... That's pretty sizable, honestly.
Wait, then I fucked it up before. Then that means it's... Okay, 10.95 lines a day is what it was before, which is still kind of okay. But, anyway, yeah, 80 lines every 2 weeks. That still seems low. Like, if that was my job, I guess if it's like you're a senior guy, you know, developing shit after you kind of like at a high level, then you're not really doing that stuff. Because at my job and my jobs before, it's like hundreds of lines a week.
I think that's because you're looking at it as this is the finished product, or like, you know, it's like the product that we're going to produce as beta, but you are forgetting like all of the steps. So like imagine like all of the lines of code that we've deleted, and like added and all that stuff, but like over the years we've been working on this. So I think it's way more than that. But if we're going to start right now and end up in this exact position, we could probably get there in 1 year, writing that many lines of code per day or per 2 weeks.
You're probably right. And then there's other stuff like this test this test package that I made where you can basically give it any game state, like say that your game crashes, and then you're able to dump the game tree at that point as a serialized value. You can then put that into this tester, and it'll show you the exact frame visually that it was where it died, right? It's basically just a saved state of the game without whatever other in-memory metadata that you have. And from there, you can say, this is like I can replicate this error over and over and over again because I have the state exactly that it died at. So, and then you can also export an SVG of game state at any time, so you can inspect it like visually, or you can, you know, make an NFT of any frame of your game. I'm just joking. No NFTs actually exist in home game stuff. There's no plans for any of that. I'm just joking, but yeah, whatever.
After this episode, I'm just gonna go through and favorite a bunch of like crypto bros taking L's or whatever.
I'll be on there soon. Anyway, fuck, what was I saying? Okay, yeah, so there's this other tool that I made to test and kind of debug stuff, and we don't have any use of that. Like, it was a one and done thing I made in a weekend. It's not really complete or whatever, and maybe I'll revisit that at some point, but that's kind of like exploratory or whatever type of work that ultimately led into something else that I built or whatever. So that stuff is valuable. It's just not counted in these lines, and so that stuff is going away in this count too. But anyway, it's quite a bit of code, and I'm looking at the state of things. Also, can you approve that pull request when you get a chance? Because I basically want to do one more after, and that'll be the big red button one, like the day that we actually launch.
I was going to review it yesterday, and then I saw you made commits into it yesterday, and I was like, all right, well, let me hold off on this.
It's this thing of like, okay, I made an initial reasonable one where it was like maybe 800 lines, and then it's like, well, I have some more stuff I could add, and then I was going to make other pull requests. So like a pull request to go into this pull request, and then a pull request to go into that pull request. But then I was like, well, fuck it. I'm just going to put it into the thing because like I'm making builds off of this, and so if you want to review it, you could review it or whatever, but this is a living, breathing work, you know, and I'm going to fucking live and breathe this motherfucker. So I said breathe this motherfucker, not breed. I know I have a little bit of a nose thing, but I did say breathe this motherfucker. Anyway, so what did I say?
I didn't, no part of me thought you said breed, and now I'm just imagining somebody sitting at their computer being like, he just says to breathe this motherfucker. And then you do that explanation like, oh shit, I actually meant breathe. Okay. Anyway.
Just to clear up anything that happens, whatever, you know? Got to be prepared.
Yeah, I guess so. I'll review it. I will give it the thumbs up. I will probably maybe request changes if I see anything, have any questions. Maybe I'll just text you, hey, I have a question. I don't know.
If you have questions, let me know. If you have changes that you want to make, I'll probably just include them in the next one, just to whatever, because I already have published builds of stuff in that pull request just that I was using to test. And like I sent a build to Alex, and he said he'd give me feedback, and he never did. So like, fuck that dude forever. Not really, I love Alex, but you know, whatever. So I don't have any like.
No, play into the drama.
Oh yeah, I haven't talked to Alex in weeks.
That might be true, actually. I believe it.
He tried to kill me when we visited him in L.A. with that goddamn hot chicken, dude. Oh my god, I almost died.
I believe that. I believe that. I know that one. That's true.
Yeah, no, he tried to assassinate me. But no, yeah, whatever. It'll be nice to get feedback at some point. But I've been making builds from that branch for about a week and a half now. I was sick this past week. I had a cold, so I didn't really do a whole lot like over the past 6-7 days. I was supposed to go to Denver for work, and then I got sick, and I ended up just staying home and like shitting my pants, and it was terrible. So I don't recommend getting sick. It was like COVID again, but it wasn't COVID. I did a test like 3 different times, all negative, but it was basically the same. Anyway, so I didn't get a whole lot of stuff. Yeah, it was a lot like the flu, but anyway, worked on a bunch of stuff, got a bunch of builds published, and so it'd be nice to just get that stuff approved because we've already kind of got it out there. And then once we get these changes all merged, I'll go on to the next round of stuff, which I'll talk about what I need to do. But basically that other final bundle of changes will be final cleanup for everything that comes up over the next week or so testing. And the game I want, like kind of a launch game I want to make that I think would be fun, like a complete simple thing that I could probably make in about 4 hours. So I'm going to include that in this bundle as well, and that'll be the big launch that we actually hit on the 1st.
Hey, nice. Is this game going to be included in Homegames, or is it going to be done through like the approval process?
Yeah, so I'll include it in the actual source for Homegames because I imagine downloading games will be, pretty stable, but I don't think it'll be like the thing I want to show at first because there's no real games that people have made yet. So, like as a first demo product, I just want to put everything we can into what people get kind of out of the box, I got you. Yeah.
So do you want to start with the things that you've changed now or the things that you want to do?
We can just briefly go through. I'll kind of go through this list, hopefully relatively quickly, of what I actually changed over the past couple weeks since the last episode. One of them was, okay, so generally speaking, I'm going through and cleaning up all of the games that we have. Like, so for example, that one that we used to play. Sorry, can you talk for a little bit? My mom sent me a text, and I don't want to have to cut this part out, so give me like 10 seconds.
Oh, yeah, no worries. So basically, Joseph's been working pretty hard. I'm looking at his notes right now, and my man's an absolute machine. And the notes that he has for what he's going to do are equally an absolute madman's notes.
Okay, sorry, I'm back. Thank you. Okay, so one of the things I was doing was updating all of our old games. For example, Word Match, which is a game that Yazeed and I used to play on the start of the podcast about 2 years ago, where it was a very early sample game that we had, kind of taking the idea from a card game called Medium that I had played at a friend's house, where basically 2 words are displayed. Each player is given a text input prompt where they basically need to say, this is the word that exists kind of between these 2 words. So if I said, what card 1 was peanut butter, and then the other one was bread, and then let's say that the middle word would be milk because we're on that vibe and that's how we're thinking in that moment or whatever, right? Like however we're vibing. But the whole thing is kind of connecting that vibe between 2 people. So it's kind of a fun, simple game. It's broken as fuck now after all the changes that we've made over the past 2 years. So basically just going through and updating that, and I started adding instructions to the beginning because the concept isn't super clear, like if you just jump into it, and it'd be nice to have someone explain to you the game, but it would also be nice if the game told you how to play it just with a simple 1 sentence. And in that time, I kind of ran into this bug where the behavior was, if you have a text node on screen and you have more than about 40 characters in that 1 sentence or that 1 text string, basically the whole game crashes. And not crashes on the server side. It's actually fine on the server side, but on the web client side, rendering is all fucked and everything is busted. And the reason for that was basically integer overflow. And basically the way that we store strings is not 1 byte per character. It's actually 4 or something like that because we support Unicode, and so it's like it's a larger range of values that we need to support. And so the way that we encode them in the array is kind of fancy and weird, but we basically take quite a few bytes per character to support text. It's not super efficient. It could probably be better, but ultimately it's not that bad. That's kind of beside the point. But basically, the way that a game is encoded in that squish array, we talked about the engine before and how it turns stuff into a list of numbers. The limitation of an unsigned 8-bit integer is 255, 255 the actual value, 256 total values if you include 0. So, for example, I couldn't include a value of 256. It would overflow and become some garbage number that would be read incorrectly and cause everything to go wrong, which is essentially what was happening on the client side when it was getting a number that was too big. And the number that was too big was the length of the string. because the way that we encode things is basically starting from the left, reading the array. Things are encoded in such a way where it says, hey, this is how long I am, like my entry in this list is. So then the thing reading me can say, well, my current index plus this length is the next thing, and so on until you hit the end of the list, right? You're just reading things in sequential order. And you're trusting these length values it's giving you, otherwise the numbers are all nonsense. You need something to keep track of where you are and what everything you're reading actually is. So basically when that value went over 255, that ended up shitting to bed. And so fixed that, and now that number can be much larger. I forget what I actually increased it to, but basically we support longer text, and now you can have a long instructions string at the beginning of the word match thing that says, pick the word that exists between the middle or whatever. So yeah, that works. That was a change to Squish. So
nice. I like that change.
Yeah.
It does give me an idea for something I want to do.
do you want to like, generally speaking, what is the idea?
It's around how we test things in the squisher is to just call the squish with like a value and then to call the unsquish afterwards, then compare those two values because they should be the same. But to do that for like all of them.
It would be nice to have a generic way to do that where basically we could enumerate every type of game node that we have, and it can kind of automatically figure out how to run it through this kind of test gauntlet. I actually have done something similar in another thing before. It was nice, but basically what we have in our current test setup is that, where we have a generic compare values thing where we say, here's a game node, squish it, unsquish it, make sure that every property matches the original. And so we have those tests. It's just that it wasn't working because, basically when you run the test on Homegames core, you're only testing it on the server side. You're not actually testing the serialization on the other side and getting the garbage value. Like, you're just like checking these things, and I guess my text comparison value was fucked up or whatever because something, but basically the overflowed, like it didn't care on the server side. Maybe it was like automatically like changing it to a 16-bit. I don't know what the hell it was doing behind the scenes. Maybe I'm missing something, but basically there was a gap in the test. I added a test to replicate that and fixed it, so it's all good.
Nice.
Sorry, I have the lingering cold cough that you have for like 9 days after a cold. You're telling everybody that you're not still sick. Yeah, so I have a little secondary note there just about how I did that. Not super interesting, but just, overflow is not good and a pretty common thing that we run into, actually. So it would be nice to have a better way to handle it, but whatever. Okay, so the next thing I have is pretty interesting, and it's something I didn't really think of before. But basically, it's how to load in the appropriate Squish library for a game that you publish and download. So the way that it worked was we had these aliases that you would have in a package.json file in Homegames core. So I would say, squish-0750 is an alias for version 0.7.5 of Squish.js from NPM. And then it can have multiple versions of Squish locally, and then a game would reference it by that tag as opposed to the actual package name. So like traditionally with a JavaScript package, you would do, squish equals require squish.js, and that would just pull in whatever version you have in your package.json that your project depends on. But what we need to do here, like I said, is using that tag instead. And basically, I think it's the way that Node 16 handles node modules and dependencies, stuff like that. But basically, what we were able to do before Node 16, or at least in the previous versions of me building this stuff, I don't know what other variable was different. Maybe my version of PKG. But anyway, a game would say, I require, squish-0750. And so the assumption would be that the module's path, whenever it's actually running, would include that dependency. Does that make sense? So the game knows that Homegames core is going to have 0750 installed as a dependency, and when the game runs in there, require resolve, that dependency is going to resolve to the Homegames core node modules directory. But it doesn't do that anymore. It's looking at its own node modules, and I think only its own node modules, unless I configure something different. But because we don't support you installing dependencies in your game or depending on things outside of Squish. Because of that, we don't run npm install. We don't have a node modules. So then this fails. You don't have, we don't know what Squish 075 is. And so it's like, well, fuck, we have metadata that we can also have in the class, right? So, but it's a chicken and egg problem, which I have in the notes here, because I can't bring this file into my class path or whatever the hell you call it in JavaScript, my dependency graph, because it requires a module that doesn't exist. It'll throw an error when I import this, but I need to know what it needs from it in some way to load it properly. But I need to load it properly to know what to say or to know what version it needs. So it's like, what do I do? So the solution that I came up with was basically there's a new parameter when you publish a game, which is what version of Squish does this depend on. So I say, hey, here's my game doodad, here's the commit, here's the whatever of it. I want to publish it, and this is published for versions 0752 or whatever of Squish. And we just have this enumeration of all the versions in this list, and you can select it and whatever. At least that's the vision. You can't do that at the moment. It's hard-coded, but whatever, you know? Sorry. So in that request, you say, I want this version. Homegames and Home Dome will say, okay, I had this other metadata for this request. I'm going to know which version of Squish to pull, and I'm going to set this process environment variable to Squish path. So that's how a game works now, where it's like Squish.js, game node, whatever, equals require, process.env.squish path. And that's the path, the local path to the Squish library's index file that you're actually going to be using. And so when running in Homegames, that Squish path is set to whatever the value was for the version that you declared was yours when you published the game. So we'll have 0751 and some map somewhere with a local path to it. And so when your game runs off of that environment variable, it'll just use the appropriate version from the main process without needing to know about node modules.
Yeah, I do like that. I like not giving people the opportunity to install their own modules as well.
Yeah, so like we don't even pull, all we pull is index.js, and if you have a source directory, src, we'll pull anything in there. But we don't pull your package JSON, and we don't run npm install. We don't get those dependencies. We just have your code and, whatever Squish version you're using. Or referencing, I mean.
Yeah, right on.
Cool. So yeah, that was another thing. The next one was pretty quick, just checking the license of published games in Home Dome. So when someone submits a publish request, we use a GNU General Public License version 3.0 or whatever. And basically that means, I'm not a lawyer, but basically that means people can take our code, do whatever they want with it. They can sell it. They can do whatever the fuck they want with it. They just need to disclose the license. And I think they need to make the code open source and some other things like that. But there's like no liability on us. They can do whatever they want. And if it destroys their shit, it's like, well, what do you, I don't know, but one of the restrictions is that all of your dependencies need to also be like compatible with it. So all of our dependencies are MIT licenses, so they're compatible, which are also just pretty much open. They're pretty permissive licenses, and so anyway, one of the restrictions is I think all of the games that are published that are kind of talking to this code base also need to be GNU GPU whatever the fuck general public license. So GitHub has an API for that, where basically you can check the license of a repository, and so I just added that API call to make sure that it's that very specific license. And if it is, then we'll allow that code to be in our system and whatever. And if not, then it'll reject it. Pretty simple change. It took like 30 minutes, but yeah, shout out to the GitHub API because it's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's super dope. I like that we have that requirement in for games as well. Is the error messaging around that like helpful?
Yeah,
is it like, hey, idiot, wrong license?
I think it says the error message is bad license type followed by the string of whatever you have. It could be nothing. So it's not the most informative, but it'll show up in your request log and stuff like that, or your publish request. So it's something. It's a step to it. One of the things I'm going to do this weekend is just go and, like I said, clean up all the styling on the website and make it presentable. Because the data's all there. It just looks like shit. So for example, this error message that says, bad whatever thing, I can probably clean up that message or whatever. But yeah, so that was that thing. Any questions before I go on to the next?
No, I like that change a lot.
Basically, just in general, some more cleanup and performance stuff on the dashboard. Not too much specifics, I guess, to talk about there. One thing is, in my ultimate dream for this, I want Homegames to be able to run on something as low powered or low end as a Raspberry Pi, like a Raspberry Pi 4, maybe with 4 gigs of RAM. I think if it can run on that, then it can run on pretty much any realistic home computer that people have, or whatever. But I just want that to be the baseline. So part of that is getting builds available for Raspberry Pi, but I can only create binaries for x86 machines. So Mac, Linux, and Windows x86, and the modern ARM-based Macs can run x86 and whatever that other process thing is. I think Windows has something like that too for ARM processors. And I don't know about Linux. But the Raspberry Pi is an ARM processor, so these builds can't run on a Raspberry Pi. I need to build them on a Raspberry Pi. But the problem is my Raspberry Pi, when I'm running the process, it needs to also build Node from source. I don't know why it can't pull it from a repo. It's not available. I don't know what the hell. Maybe I can look into that. But it runs out of memory when it does that. So I can't at the moment build the binaries on my Pi because it runs out of memory when just building Node to bundle into the binary. You know what I mean? So TBD on that, I guess. But it will run on a Raspberry Pi. You just need to run it from source. You can't, run the binaries. But
yeah.
Anyway, that's a bummer. One thing, just real quick, better config handling. Basically, it's kind of a gamble which config file you're actually using. It's not very clear what is happening when you run the process of what config values it's pulling from. It could be in Homegames Web, it could be in Homegames Core, it could be in the Homegames root thing, it could be in a binary, it could be anywhere. So basically, I've made a function that can just find one config file, like a JSON file, not JS anymore. It doesn't need to be a JavaScript thing, it's just JSON data to make it more kind of accessible to people too, just simple file. And so it'll basically look in the root of wherever you ran it from, and some other places as well, to just see if I see this file, I'm going to use that, and then log where I'm getting it, just to make it more consistent and easy to trace. So yeah, that was pretty small, and that's pretty much it for all the stuff I actually changed.
Right on.
Yeah.
Can we back up to what you were talking about with that JSON file? What configs are you?
Shit, brother.
Removed.
You mean what config do we use, or what?
What configs? Yeah, can you give me an example of one of the configs that you moved into these JSON files or the JSON file?
Yeah, so we have the home port. What port does the home thing run on? And when you run the client, it needs to connect to a game server somewhere. What port is that game server at? What range of ports can we create new servers on? So I'm going to use port range 7100 to 7200 for all the new games I create. So I'm not running on any weird port ranges on whatever machine you have running. You can configure that. There's an is demo flag. For example, if you go to Pico de Gallo right now, search is disabled. There's a little message that says search disabled in demo, and that's just an environment flag that we have because I don't want people downloading games onto Pico de Gallo, because then they can make something bad and then download it onto my server publicly, and then they can basically manipulate that whole thing. So downloads are off in that environment. There's a bunch of other shit too. Where do you want to store assets? By default, it'll be HG assets in the root directory of the project, but it could be anywhere else you have on your machine. Game directory, where do you want games to be downloaded to? Before, when we were doing TLS, HTTPS certs and stuff like that, we had certificate paths and auth credential paths that you would store locally. Just a bunch of shit like that. Probably others I'm forgetting, but yeah.
Oh, right on. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so onto the list of stuff that I need to change before the next episode. So I'm basically planning on doing all this within the next week, and then reserving that final week for just kind of documentation and relaxation, because I could feel my body giving up. You know, not really, but you know, yeah. Anyway, need to change. Finish logging improvements. So at the moment, most of our logs are just logging to the console and not giving a fuck about anything else. They're just sending out messages to the console, which is cool. But there's no real system to it, and if you don't direct that output to a log, it goes away when you kill the process and, you know, close out that tab and whatever. And there's no information in the line about like, like, what is this from? It's just text. So now there's like a little prefix in every string where it'll be like, you know, Homegames core. Maybe I'll add a time as well of the actual log, and then just, you know, here's the message. And then I need to basically generalize the use of that and remove all of the other console.log stuff just to have more consistent, more informative logs throughout the application. But I also need to write those to a file because I did some debugging running the binaries on my Windows machine this past couple weeks, and basically it could run and you get all this output, but at least on Windows, when the process dies, it'll immediately close the window. So like it'll throw some error and then you have a eighth of a second to see it before it shuts down the window, and it's like, well, I can't debug this unless I time it just right, or what, you know what I mean? So so basically it just needs to go out to a file for you to be able to just read that and see exactly what went wrong, in addition to in the actual console itself, you know. But yeah, anyway, so I need to improve logging. Like I said earlier, I need to improve the website styling. Like I said, the data is there. It just kind of looks like shit, specifically our tables. Horizontally scrolling tables come from hell, and they should not exist anywhere. It would be nice to run some auto-linting process in our deployment pipeline, just like, you know, code goes through, code gets fixed. Code, you know, very simple. We don't have to think about it. Would be nice to set up that config at some point to be more specific to our needs, but the general config that we have now is fine, I guess. Yeah, I need to fix all the local games like Word Match, like I was mentioning, and Clicktionary and the other stuff that I have, as well as working on that game I mentioned that I'm gonna, you know, should hopefully be like an afternoon of work. Default config file. So basically, if you don't have a config file, the game will just, or the server will just complain now and crash. What it should do is create a default file full of reasonable defaults, and then you can go and edit them after the fact, as opposed to coming in with a JSON file full of values that you don't know about. So that's pretty important. And then finally, like I said, documentation. Documentation's boring as shit, and I know it's been a gap for me in the sense that I literally haven't written any in probably 2 years, for Homegames specifically, I mean. So what I'm going to do is take advice from when I worked at a big professional tech company, big boy boss job man, or whatever the fuck. My manager said, basically document writing was a big part of the process at that job, and I hated it. And my manager told me that whenever he had to write a big document, all he would do is just sit down with some whiskey and just drink through the bottle as much as you feel like you want to, and the words will come. You know, the writing will come. You just kind of let it happen. And so for me...
Why does this sound like Ernest Hemingway giving advice on how to write a novel? What the hell?
It's less artistic and more just like straight up in pursuit of money and selling your attention. Anyway, fucking hellish nightmare. But I'm going to take his advice and just get fucked up and write a bunch, and that'll be great. That'll be like my relaxation vacation week. And then, yeah, you're coming over on the 1st. I got the brisket. It came from the place. I was a little worried because they didn't ship it for 2 weeks. And, yeah, it's in the freezer. I'll pull it out in probably a few days for it to start defrosting by the 1st. And then we'll do the whole fucking thing.
We'll get Liddy.
Liddy 3 titty. We're going to bring out the third one. 16,000 lines. Very happy about this. Very happy about the work we've done. Very tired, very happy, very excited, very over it, I would say.
You are a real animal, I will say, a real machine.
Yeah, thank you. I want to be on the Tesla robot akimbo Berettas. You know, I want to be on that level of animal, just machine, just monstrous, you know, ripping up the code base.
I thought you were saying you wanted to be on the team that makes that. Now I was like, I don't know if I trust your robotics.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust myself on that team either. Because it's like I would add dumb shit. Where it's like if you say a Lamau 3 times, it'll just shoot itself in the head. I would add that.
I really thought you were going to be like, here's a really old Call of Duty meme, but no, the ALMAO.
I had this thing. I think this is how I know I'm having a fucking quarter life crisis or maybe midlife. I don't know how things are going. But fucking, I was legitimately thinking of getting an A Lamau tattoo. I've been in this thing of wanting another tattoo, so I'm just like looking. I'm desperate. I'm buying NFTs. I'm desperate. Fucking anything to give me a rush. On your other
wrist or like on your chest?
Zenobia wants me to get a sleeve, but I think I'm too nice looking. I'm too friendly looking to get a sleeve. It's like you hear me talk and you're like, this guy's a pussy. You know, the whole sleeve goes away.
Yeah. What you should do is you should get a sleeve, but it should be like half Kanye West's face, half Young Thug's face.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, I like that.
Yours? Listen. I don't know about putting your own face on your arm, but putting someone else's face, I think, is okay.
We'll get a tasteful color blend between me and Kanye. It'll be like you know what I mean? Like you won't even see the transition. It's like one man, one face, one world. I'll get Young Thug on my whole back, though. I love that man.
I don't know if I can condone this blending faces, but okay.
It's all right. You'll believe me when it's finished. You'll all see. All right. Is it time to close this out?
Homegames.
This is episode 110, by the way.
Yes. Episode 6.
Yeah, good one, brother. That binary, that double dabble, which means that when we do our official one, it'll be 7, which is a lucky number. The actual big red button,
really?
The big red button launch thing is going to be on July 1st, which is the 7th month. So 7. The episode's going to be 111. 3, right? 3 times 2 plus 1 for no reason. That's 7. And then also 7 is 111 in binary or vice versa. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I don't understand the math one, but I do understand the binary one.
No, you just got to follow me here. 3, right? 3 because it's, right, the number.
Yeah.
Just multiply that by 2, and plus 1, that's 7.
It is 7.
Right. That's all you got to know. Don't think too hard. Don't think too hard about this. Just know we have the 3 segments.
Listen, my brain is very rarely on the on position. It is mostly on autopilot or off. Ooh.
Nice.
Slap my mic right now.
Perfect timing. But yes, it'll be episode 111. The next one, when we actually launch, it'll be a big moment for all of us. And I don't know what I'm going to do with my life after that.
We're going to get really into camping.
Ooh.
And,
I know just the NFT for that. I keep getting ads for this outdoor-based crypto project.
What the hell does that mean?
I believe it's called outside.io. I'm not advertising for them at all. It appears to be a bunch of photographs of camping sold as digital collectibles.
The thing I love most is to have pictures of other people camping. It really brings joy to my life to see other people camping.
Yeah, well, whatever. Some people like it. Let them do what they do. You know, someone's paying money to put this ad in my feed. Gotta love it.
I can't wait till somebody doing a podcast says, I don't know what Homegames is, but I'm getting paid money to...
Someone's literally done that. I paid for this dude like a long time ago when I just wanted someone to listen to the podcast. For God's sake, I paid this dude to like promote our thing on his radio show or something. No one ever listened, but he's like, Homegames, the website for you, or whatever the fuck, you know. It's dumb as hell.
Fair.
Yeah. Anyway, that is going to do it for us. Thank you, everybody, for listening. As always, our music is done by our friend Tynan. He is Nitan on Bandcamp. That is Nitan, Nytan. We have a website at homegames.io with some early builds you can go and check out right now, actually, if you want to. We have a Twitter at homegames.io. Zero Crypto. Come follow us. Be the 19th follower. Send us a letter. Send us a message. Send us a complaint. Send us you can send us a YouTube video that you think is funny. You can send us whatever you want at homegames.io. At the bottom of the form, at the bottom of the page, there's a contact form. Send us some stuff, you know? Thanks.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.